Hello and welcome to another episode of Coast Life,
your guide to all things coastside.
I'm Alyssa Wong-Conway.
And I'm Madison McKay.
For today's episode, we've scoured the great state of California to bring you an excellent group of events all the way from Sacramento down to Los Angeles. But make sure that you stick around for the end where we have a fun surprise in store.
But before we get to this fun, furry surprise, and before I give away any more clues as to what the surprise could possibly be, we have a couple other videos, clips, and things to talk to all of our PCT viewers about. Our first stop will be to the Sacramento State University 20th Annual MLK Appreciation Event. At this event, MLK was able to At this event, Martin Luther King Jr. is being honored and his legacy is being talked about, and how we have to make sure that all of his legacies and everything that he stood for is still present in the 21st century. It is a great event for youth in the community of Sacramento, the students and the faculty to come together as a family, I quote in the video, to discuss the living legacy of MLK. In our second video at CSM, we will be talking about a student-run radio station, as well as our own radio station here in PCT, right, Alyssa?
Yes, of course. Yeah, we just launched our own radio station, so make sure that you stick around to see that event. And then second to last, but certainly not least, we once again visit our good friend Dan Sudrin, who is continuing his work at the Mission Science Workshop in the Mission District of San Francisco.
Let's take a look at the MLK event at Sacramento State University right now.
So I'm here with Tony Greenwell, and Tony, tell me what you're doing tonight.
We are having the Martin Luther King Celebration Dinner. It is our 20th anniversary. So many of these people have been here every year for 20 years, and I heard out in the crowd there are people that have been here 15, 16 out of the 20 years, so it's amazing.
And tell me what your role in all of this is, and how much of a setup this is to pull off every year.
Well, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, but we have a lot of support and some great volunteers. We have a wonderful planning committee. It's an amazing event, and it's to keep the life and the legacy of Dr. King alive.
In your mind, what is the importance of this event this evening, and how does it serve not just the student body but the wider community?
There are so many students that we need to serve out there. Sacramento State is dedicated to being part of the community. Tonight we reach out our arms and the community reaches out and we become one family. And that's what tonight is about. Celebrating who we are, the diversity and our roots, and celebrating that we can make a difference.
For you personally, what do you think is the significance of an evening like tonight? Just in your own life, and when you reflect on what's going on and what you're able to witness here tonight?
Every time I come here, it reminds me of my duty to give more. There are times when I, as a council member and as a community leader, get tired. And then I come here and I realize there is no time to get tired. There's time to put all of our energies and efforts into the same work that Martin Luther King gave his life for, to keep it going to eradicate the injustices and to correct the wrongs of the past, and for us to all be able to move together successfully forward, go forward successfully together. And so this is a night to remind me my work is not done, our work is not done.
What a great event, and what a great way to honor Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, especially at this time of year, Black History Month. It's important that we don't forget who we came from and work towards making a better future for ourselves. So, Maddie, what do we have coming up next?
Coming up next, we are going to be heading down to San Mateo, the College of San Mateo actually, where we'll be heading into the student-run radio station named KDOG station. This broadcast is available on Thursdays at noon, where it is completely student-ran and the content is curated to tell stories. As said in the interview, the head of the department says that, you know, the school is lacking a journalism department, but this KDOG radio station really makes up for the lack thereof. And I think that here at PCT, we are so blessed to actually offer classes for any of the public to come in and learn how to use these tools, as Alyssa was speaking about our new radio station. As well as, again, being a public access station and having the ability for viewers like you to come in and learn about what our show is all about. Alyssa can tell us a little bit more about our radio station and how that coincides with the CSM radio station.
Yeah, so the College of San Mateo just launched their radio station, and PCT also just launched our own radio station.
Yes.
And since we are open to the public, you don't have to be a student in order to participate. So make sure that you go visit our website or give us a call in order to find out how that you can get involved. We are accepting pitches for different shows, and if you are somebody who has a story to tell, let us know. But in the meantime, we'll check out College of San Mateo and see what kinds of stories they're telling.
When we're talking about radio here at KDOG, I think we're really thinking about how do we have a space that we can allow people to express some creativity and really curate a show for somebody that tells a story, whether that's an audio, music story, or it's a talk show or something. How do you curate this experience for somebody in a certain amount of time, and how do you make that relevant? And do we have a ton of listeners? No, we don't. And I think that the value of doing it is not in the number of listeners, right? And so we're never going to be, the hit station that everybody wants to tune into, and that's not our role. Do I hope that we become the place where people in our community tune in because there's relevant content that they're not going to hear on some other station? Yes, right? Can we be the voice of the college? Absolutely. We don't have a journalism department on this campus anymore. And so we, as a radio station, can really fill a void of giving students a chance to have their voices heard. Podcasting has made a huge resurgence in audio because for many years nobody wanted to do audio, everybody wanted to do video. Like, it really was like, oh, well, why would I just do audio only if I could do video also? And podcasting has really made audio storytelling much more popular, and it's really democratized it so that anybody can have a podcast and you can put out your material in this sort of tape-delayed way of a podcast. And so I think it's interesting, in this now we're really competing with Pandora and Spotify and iHeartRadio. There's all sorts of options that you can have where you can just say, I don't like that song, thumbs down, right? Skip to the next one, skip to the next one. And it makes it, it's changed music a lot too, because you know, you wouldn't, in the 70s, you'd get a song that had like a, you know, an 8-minute song that had 3 minutes of like guitar solo or something, or a 2-minute introduction before a singer started. And you just can't do that anymore, right? If somebody's like on the dial ready to hit next, if you've got an introduction that's more than 15 seconds, somebody's already hit next to get to the next song, and then you're not getting paid for your music.
Here at PCT, we want to give a hats off to the CSM KDOG radio station for coming out and developing their own station, despite the fact that they, again, don't have their own department. Us ourselves at PCT, like we described, are creating our up-and-coming radio station, and it is so important for us to continue to support these community-based and public access stations all throughout the Bay Area. And one of our other videos that we don't want to spoil too much yet, but is going along the theme of public access and how much support we need for that. But stay tuned for our next video that Alyssa is going to tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, so the Alliance for Community Media is an organization that every year hosts a ceremony that celebrates the best in public access media. It was held in Los Angeles, California, in Long Beach to be specific, and our very own Marty Elia, who is in charge of our station, was able to go there. He got some great footage, and there were some awesome results at the end of the night. Maddie, can you tell us a little bit more about why it's so important for us to be involved in public media as public?
Absolutely. So Marty talks a little bit about the video about how public access stations like PCT, like KDOG, like household names such as KQED are at risk. The funding for these kinds of stations are not in bulk as much as we would like them to, and so there is a risk factor in PCT, and we kind of wanted to start the conversation with adding this clip into our program as to what this means to you. Think about that as you watch our next clip at the Alliance video.
We are here at the Alliance for Community Media. You may be aware that this is an organization that does wonderful things to help content creators. And so I'm excited to tell you that the Alliance is well. It is in good tact. But I want to inform you and warn you that there are threats. And here's the deal. So community media, that is to say public education and government access, is under threat. Cable companies who are using the public rights of way would be able, and not just cable companies but all kinds of operators, would be able to basically use the public rights of way and not give anything back to that community for community media or community uses. That's what we're talking about. Now, if that were to happen, how would that make you feel? So those are the things that we're dealing with, those are the things that we're talking about, and that's what we're trying to mitigate against before it happens. I want you to be aware, it's the Alliance for Community Media, ACM. These are the issues that we are grappling with. My organization, PacificCoast.tv, or SavePublicAccess.com. excited because we here at PCT have won our first wave, and almost I think it was the first award of the evening, here at Long Beach, here at the Alliance for Community Media. And this one is a very special one because this show is called Sound Waves. And this show goes all over the Bay Area, but all over, really, the world. And this particular show is hosted by a young lady named Shasta, who many Bay Area people know as the voice in the morning or the midday at The Bone, which is the rock radio station in San Francisco. And Shasta, this one's for you. Producers Dennis Willis and Stephen Kirk and Shasta have made one amazing show, and we are very, very, very happy to say thank you and congratulations to the Soundwaves team on behalf of PCT.
Well, a big congratulations is certainly in order for Marty and Shasta, who were winners of an award, apparently the very first award of the night at the Alliance for Community Media ceremony. Once again, we want to stress the importance and the how vital it is to support your local free public access community stations. Not only does PCT do a lot of education for people who are just curious about how media works, but we also film a lot of local government meetings. So it's a great way to stay on top of what's going on right in your backyard. For our next event, we'll have Maddie give us a little bit of an intro to an old friend of ours, Dan, who you may remember from the last Coast Life episode. And where did we visit him?
At the last Coast Life episode, we went down to the Mission Science Workshop where we got to meet the lovely Dan Sudrin. He's very passionate about science and making science really available to those in the community, especially in lower income communities like the Mission itself. In this week's Coast Life episode, our next clip will feature Sudrin again, where he will be discussing his first location of the Mission Science Workshop, in which this is where he started his whole idea of bringing real life science that's very textual and not as really mobile as we're seeing technology going. Dan is very passionate about his work, and we get to go where the whole project started. Let's take a look right now.
The Mission High School site in the Mission District of Mission Science Workshop. We have two sites in our program. One is this one in the Mission District. We have one in the Excelsior District, which is on Mission Street itself, south of here. This site is our first, up until 6 years ago, this was our only site. So this is our sort of the flagship. And we expanded to the second site 6 years ago. So that's the difference between the two sites. And that's somewhat, and also this site is actually only half as large as our new site, which has to do with what you find at one site that you might not find at the other, because simply there are different sizes. As in a lot of programs like ours, we're small nonprofits. We're not institutionalized. We fight year to year to stay alive. So the good side of that is it kind of keeps us honest. We can't be pretentious about what we do. We have to be all the time basically serving our neighborhoods, and then they will get the city to do what it should do. So Fresno is one site we began in the 90s. It's still there after all these years. We also have helped us start a site in Watsonville, which is also there and also under the city. In Greenfield, which is Salinas Valley, the same thing, under the city, and has been there, in that case, about 7 years. I sort of subscribe to the saying about small is beautiful, less is more. I think there's a lot to be said for small neighborhood-based learning centers, whether really in science or anything else, but especially in science. Science tends to go very, very big, such as our 2 giant museums in San Francisco and others in the Bay Area. They definitely have gone the big route, and there are reasons for that. It's difficult to have multiple centers, but that really has been our modus operandi from the very beginning, was to not get bigger, but to convince other neighborhoods, other areas to start their own local neighborhood-friendly science workshops.
What an amazing location, and really thanks again to Dan Sudrin for always talking to us and showing us what kind of crazy things are going on at the Mission Science Workshop. To reiterate the hours that they are open, it is the second Saturday of every month from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. So even if you're not a morning bird, you have no excuse not to go at least check it out at Mission High School.
Our next clip will be featuring the infamous Gunner the Otter. Yes, this is our furry surprise that we had for you at the end. What better way to end the show with Gunner? I had the opportunity to meet Gunner and see him swimming down at our favorite CuriOdyssey Center down in San Mateo. Gunner the Otter has a very inquisitive story to him that you will see in the video. Gunner the Otter was actually rescued by a normal family in Washington State. They found him, took him home, and didn't really necessarily want to take him down to a shelter for fear that it would, that the otter would be euthanized. So this otter became domesticated and given the name Gunner. After a while, they realized they could no longer house an otter in their bathtub, and it was later relocated to CuriOdyssey. At CuriOdyssey, Gunner is one of the fuzziest, furriest, and friendly otters in the entire world, and especially at CuriOdyssey, they're doing great things with Gunner, exposing him to all the kids that visit CuriOdyssey and making sure that he's well taken care of. At CuriOdyssey, they take in animals that are no longer able to live on their own in the wild. And let's take a look at what Gunner's up to.
CuriOdyssey is a science playground and zoo. We are a non-for-profit organization, so all of our visits and memberships go directly to helping us run the facility. We don't actually rescue the animals ourselves, but we do take in non-releasable animals. So when a wild animal goes to a rehabilitation center with an injury or because it was a former pet, it gets examined by a veterinarian. And over a course of treatment, if they find that the animal cannot survive in the wild on its own, they have to place the animal in a permanent setting. We have a male river otter and his name is Gunner. Gunner was found on someone's private property up in Washington. They had 3 small ponds on their property and they were just out walking the land one day and saw that he was there. They did leave him when they initially found him because they were sure his mom was somewhere around, probably just out getting food and was going to come back to him. But by the 3rd day when he was still there and his mom had not come and got him, they realized that they needed to step in. So they decided to bring him into their home and they kept him as a pet. He grew up with this family's children with their 2 dogs. He slept in their beds and lived in their bathtub, which is an incredible story given how very aggressive and dangerous river otters can actually be. Unfortunately, they were given some incorrect information from a neighbor, and instead of taking him to a rehabilitation center, they kept him as a pet because they were told that if they took him to a rehabilitation center, that they would euthanize the animal, which is not true. It's very important when wild animals are found, especially as babies, that they're taken to a rehabilitation center so they can be cared for and ideally released back to the wild. when he was about 4 to 5 months old, they realized that he was getting to be more of a handful than they had initially thought. So the woman circled back to a rehabilitation center who assured her that the animal would not be euthanized, and so luckily she sent him to that rehabilitation center in Washington. Most people believe that river otters are all fun and fuzzy and they just look happy all the time, and why wouldn't they be sweet, adorable animals? But the fact is that river otters actually can be very aggressive. They have a lot of very dangerous teeth that they could do a lot of damage to a person if they actually got a hold of them. So it's actually very lucky for these people that Gunner was such a good-natured animal even when he was a baby.
We hope you had a wonderful time joining us down at CuriOdyssey to visit our furry friend, the otter. And also, we hope you had a wonderful time going down the California coast with us and visiting and witnessing a bunch of different events down in our backyard.
Absolutely. You know, whether we're honoring a civil rights icon like Martin Luther King Jr., or watching, as Maddie said, the adorable Gunner run around and thrive at CuriOdyssey, we in California know how fortunate we are to be in such a diverse and varied state with so much local activism and community involvement. And so if you are interested in visiting any of these events or maybe seeing what's around in the future, what can we do, Maddie?
You can go ahead and go down to pacificcoast.tv in order to go and witness some events that we talked about on our show. Go to calendar events and maybe you can be on the next episode of Coast Life. I'm Madison McKay.
And I'm Alyssa Wong-Conway.
And thanks for joining us for another episode of Coast Life,
your guide to all things coastside.
See you next time.